Toast and tea.
The energy we get, or I get, from an audience is, if you could bottle that and sell it, oh my gosh, that's what I feed off of. I just finished hitting the milestone of 65 years. As long as you want to continue growing, improving, learning, the opportunities there, age is just a number.
How is it that you're able to decipher and focus on what feedback is relevant to you and what feedback isn't relevant?
Listen to what people have to say. Let's say, I said, okay, Shantia, what do you think about my speech? And you're like, you know what, Luisa, that part that you mentioned, God, maybe you want to leave that out because you're going to offend somebody. And that's exactly the feedback I got from 90% of the people and the clubs. They said, Luisa, you don't want to put God in there. Find out why. I'm going to say what I want to say because I'm going to stay true to myself. Because if I don't stay true to myself, guess what? Then I sound like every other speaker.
Your 2024 speech revolved around the theme of getting a literal reset in life. A literal reset in life. What has this reset been like for you thus far?
Oh, you don't realize how strong you are until you really need to step up to the plate and be strong. And I believe that's what all of this has taught me.
Toast and tea, where we have all the tea tips and stories, here to inspire you. Hosted by Norway's Toastmasters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, Toast and Tea. I'm your host for today's episode. My name is Shantia Crowley. Today, we have with us a compelling storyteller, someone who uses fearless humor to push the envelope and inspire. As the second place winner of the 2019 Toastmaster World Champion of Public Speaking, who came back to win first place in 2024, she serves as a stupendous example for second chances. Luisa Montalvo. Did I say that correctly, Luisa?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. Luisa, welcome to the podcast. I'm delighted to be meeting you here today for the first time. Can you tell our listeners more about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me. I'm Luisa Montalvo. I was born and raised here in South Texas. I just finished hitting the milestone of 65 years. I believe it's a testament to anyone who thinks that after 40, your life is over, or after 50, or even after 60. I am just trying to put it out there to let people know that as long as you want to continue growing, improving, learning, the opportunities there, age is just a number. I do remember somebody telling me as a kid growing up that they said, oh, well, once you have kids, you have to become an adult. And I went, ooh, I don't think I want to be an adult. So I'm still learning how to adult. But like I said, I was born and raised here. I had a great parental group with my mother and father. Father inspired me never to give up. My mother inspired me to learn as much as I could. She was the one that introduced me to public speaking. And I believe I was 10 years old at the time when she started putting me in front of a group of her 200 Avon ladies and helped me assist her with the Avon meetings. So I never really had a fear of public speaking, but along with Toastmasters International, they've shown me that you can excel in certain areas, but then you need to learn how to grow in different areas. And so I'm very grateful for the organization for giving me that opportunity. I was in Toastmasters, I think altogether 13 years. I've been competing since day one because that's really the only reason I joined, is because I love to compete. And like you said, 2019, I was able to take home second place, and then this year taking home first place. So even though I didn't know what I was doing at the time, you go back and I reflect and I give keynotes, and people tell me, wow, your will and your want to continue to keep going is what inspires people. And I said, well, that's, you know, mama didn't raise no quitters, so there you go. But that's basically my story. I'm having a great time. I'm absolutely enjoying every single minute of it. And again, thank you for having me here on this podcast.
Wow. Thank you for that, Luisa. Referring back to your mother, so your mother introduced you into public speaking. Can you speak more to her influence in your life?
Absolutely. I try to encourage, anytime I do a keynote, I try to encourage the parents out there. And I say, as soon as you're able to put your child in front of an audience, whatever it is, whether it's ballet or piano or speaking, I would recommend it, because what you're doing is you're allowing the child to grow at an early age, and you're taking away that, because public speaking is the number one fear. So if you can take that fear away from them, then you are not limiting the child's future for being able to grow and expand. So with my mother being the Avon district manager she was, every Tuesday night, she was in front of 200 Avon women conducting meetings that would show the Avon ladies how to sell products, how to their appearance, how to improve their appearance, how to communicate with the customers. And every now and then my mom would say, Luisa, would you like to share with everyone what Avon products you use today? And I thought, ooh. And since I watched her in front of 200 women, I was merely trying to emulate her and thinking, everybody does this. Everybody gets up in front of 200 people and speaks for 5-10 minutes. So I grew up with no fear of public speaking. And when you allow your child or anyone to do that, you're allowing them to grow in a way that you had no idea would be able to influence them and help them get through life better. So I am very, very grateful to my mother for that.
Wow. Fear is such an interesting thing or topic, I think, to refer to it. When you're talking about your story, it's taking me back to Trevor Noah, and he talked about his upbringing in South Africa during the apartheid times. His mother essentially illegally had him as a mixed child, and she pretended to be his nanny, but she raised him with, he would say, like no fear of government or resistance around him being a mixed child. Like she wanted him to be courageous. She wanted him to ask questions. And people look at his story and they see it as miraculous. They're like, wow, you're this like young guy who grew up during apartheid time,
Mhm.
very unusual upbringing in South Africa, and you ended up just like thriving and you're very inquisitive. So I think it's so interesting that you mentioned how it is important to give kids that exposure early on to just let them know, hey, like there's nothing to fear. In fact, you need to be courageous and push those boundaries, because if you push those boundaries, those limitations don't exist for you like they do for everyone else. And there's so much you're able to excel at in life. So
Mhm.
that's incredible. It sounds like your mother was very pivotal in helping you to do that.
She was. And if I may share a story that my father would always comment on, I recall I was about 5 or 6 years old, and my brother was a year older than I was. And there was a big storm, a lightning storm coming. And we ran to the front living room and we're looking out the window at this amazing lightning storm. And my mother ran over to grab us to pull us away from the window. And my father asked her, he says, what are you doing? She said, well, it's lightning. And he said, and she says, well, I'm scared. He says, you're scared of lightning. He said, don't go giving our children your fears. They're already going to grow up with their own fears. They don't need your fears on top of that. So he said, if they want to watch the lightning show, let them watch it. And my mother stepped back and we sat there and watched the lightning and we're amazed. And so I thought that was, it was I think, again, my parents, they were the perfect balance, because whatever my mother was strongly about on one thing, my father would be on the opposite side. So I was able to analyze and then choose which one I thought was better. So again, my mom promoting being able to speak in public, but yet my father saying, don't limit the kids. And so I think that was beautiful.
That is beautiful. That's an incredible memory. That's an unusual very different experience, I think, from what I hear about a lot of people and their parents. But from people who have excelled at anything that they do, I often hear stories like yours, where it's like I was challenged.
Mhm.
Someone told me or advocated for me to step up, to believe in myself, or try something different. Don't play it safe, and that's exactly what it sounds like your father was helping you to do.
Exactly.
So let's go back to your 2024 speech. When it came to your 2024 speech, I really enjoyed your powerful storytelling. I felt you left it all on the stage. When it came to putting the audience on the edge and pushing them over into laughter, and with yourself sitting at the center of the stage in your wheelchair, you found a way to be creative and yet effective with your gestures. Your presence to me felt very confident and grounded. How did you feel after giving the speech?
Well, I almost hate to share it with you because you built it up so beautifully. But another thing, and I'm going to share another memory, and I've shared it before. My mother enrolled us in ballet when we were children. And I remember being on stage during the recital. And we were supposed to do, there were 10 of us in a straight line. We were supposed to do a Sinead turn to the left. And I got confused and I did the Sinead turn to the right while everybody else was going to the left. My mother was sitting in the audience with our neighbor, and our neighbor looked at my mom. She says, "Oh my gosh, Luisa has a solo?" Because I was the only one going one way and everybody else was going the other way. And my mom was shocked. And when I realized I made the mistake of going the wrong way, I put my head down and I shook my head, telling the entire audience I made a mistake. So she told me after, she said, if you wouldn't have put your head down and admitted to the audience you made a mistake, everybody would have thought you had a solo. But once you admitted you made a mistake, you told everyone you made a mistake. And so that taught me that in public speaking, or really with anything, if you don't go and go, "Oh, I'm sorry I said that," or "I didn't mean to say that," you don't want to say that because half the time the people don't know what your speech is. And during that speech that I gave at the contest in August, I made two mistakes. I left out two important parts. So when I finished my speech, I rolled off the stage, I went down the wheelchair ramp, and I told myself, well, I guess you'll have to come back and do this again next year because I knew I wasn't going to place because I knew what mistakes I had made. Luckily, I didn't tell anybody, especially not the judges. Oh my gosh, I made mistakes. I don't blame you if I don't win. So it was, I guess, composed enough, well enough to be able to get my message across with or without the two references that I had left out. So that I actually felt this speech is not one of my best speeches,
Hmm.
and I'll have to come back next year.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, that's real talk, though. Like, especially when you're giving this speech often, I think we can kind of segue into this next question. When you're getting the feedback over and over, and you're presenting this speech in your club, area, district, division, competitions, you're getting so much. Maybe they're not giving you feedback there and then, but some people maybe have some feedback to give or to offer to you. How is it that you're able to decipher and focus on what feedback is relevant to you and what feedback isn't relevant? Because it almost sounds as though, you probably adjusted your speech so it was perfected, but then when you actually presented it during the world champion competition, there are certain elements that you had all the elements you needed for it to be effective and for it to capture the judge's attention still.
Exactly. So how do you decipher? How does anybody decipher what to keep, what not to keep, who to listen to, who not to listen to? And I think whenever I try to give a keynote, I always tell them, look, again, the way my mom would say, if you ask people for advice, they will give you the best advice. But in the long run, you're going to do what you want to do. In other words, people can say, hey, that person really isn't good for you in your life. And you're like, okay, okay. And everybody will tell you that. But in the long run, if you really want to stay with that person, you're going to stay with them regardless of all the good advice you got. So that's just it. So the thing I try to tell my audience or reflect to my audience is listen to what people have to say. Let's say I said, okay, Shantia, what do you think about my speech? And you're like, you know what, Luisa, that part that you mentioned, God, maybe you want to leave that out because you're going to offend somebody. And that's exactly the feedback I got from 90% of the people and the clubs. They said, Luisa, you don't want to put God in there. And I sat there and then I asked them, and here's what we don't do sometimes. If you were to give me that feedback, I would say, oh, okay. But take it a step further. Okay, why do you feel I shouldn't say that? See, find out why. Oh, well, it's when I was a child. Oh, okay. So what you're telling me, the reason you don't want me to mention is because it's personal to you. But if you give me a broad spectrum of, well, 80% of the people with religion, okay, well, that I'm going to listen to. But if you tell me it's something personal, I can't change what you went through personally. Now, here's the main thing. You have to stay true to yourself because almost everyone told me, don't say anything about God. And I said, you know what? I think the way I present it, it's okay because I'm talking about my God, not your God, not anybody else, my God. And if people are offended, guess what? I'll come back next year and I'll do this all over again. So it's almost a question of what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? Well, you know what? I'm going to say what I want to say because I'm going to stay true to myself. Because if I don't stay true to myself, guess what? Then I sound like every other speaker. And I don't want to be that. I would rather 10 years from now you come up to me and say, Luisa, you remember that speech you gave about God? I absolutely loved it and I remember it. I'd rather you tell me that than give me a trophy and forget about what I spoke about. Trophy's nice, don't get me wrong. But if you can do both, you go for the memory. You want people to remember what you said, especially if it's a very good core message that everyone can receive.
I think there's also something to say for when you're presenting a speech over and over. Sometimes you could have all the elements and it just sounds like it's all flowing and it sounds like the perfect championship speech versus I find that the people who win that day in the moment, there's some kind of energy, there's a bit of rebelliousness, there's some risk. There's like some kind of risk they're taking when they're giving that speech. And I feel like that's what people are feeling. Like they're admiring the risk, being in front of this huge audience, this worldwide audience, and putting yourself out there, putting your thoughts, your inner thoughts out there, being vulnerable in front of people. I think that's what people admire the most. And I think that's one of the huge qualities that your speech had was that transparency, that vulnerability, that risk. Yeah, that like I mentioned it earlier, like that fearless humor, referring to, religion. That's risky, but I think people like that by the end of the day.
Do you know why they like it? Because it's different.
Hmm.
Because you almost go, ooh. And if my intent is to make my audience a little uncomfortable, because I want them to go, oh my gosh, what's she gonna say next?
Hmm.
What is she going to say next? And that to me is you want your audience listening to you.
Hmm.
So if you say something now, the thing is finding the thin line where you don't go over and make it absurd, but you make it to where people go, well, she kind of has a point there. I want my audience thinking. I want them to be thinking, oh, what is she going to say? Well, if I guess it's her perspective. And that's all it is. That's all it is. Hey, listen to it from my side of the story.
1000% agree. So your speech revolved around the theme of your 2024 speech revolved around the theme of getting a literal reset in life.
Mhm.
a literal reset in life. What has this reset been like for you thus far?
Oh, to be completely honest with you, I don't think I've ever had to really work at anything my entire life because I have had this, still do, happy go lucky nature. Oh, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's okay. I really don't have to put forth effort. I really don't have to work at this, but this accident compiled with two other setbacks I've had in my life in the last 3 years has just thrown me for a loop. And some people say you don't realize how strong you are until you really need to step up to the plate and be strong. And I believe that's what all of this has taught me. One, I think he was 15 or 16 years old. I was judging a gavel masters group and I was speaking to them, and I believe there was maybe like 8 boys and 2 girls. And I said, I did this and I did that. And one kid said, I read up on your story. I've read your story on different articles. He said, and I guess you didn't come this far just to come this far. I went, oh my gosh, you're right. You see, I didn't go through all the trauma and accident and not being able to walk, still almost 3 years later, not being able to walk. I was thinking this was going to take me 3 months to get over. And here I am 3 years, almost 3 years later, and still can't walk. So I have had to give myself grace, which I don't think a lot of us allow ourselves. And I can be patient with you and your mother and your brother and your sister and my friends but patient with myself, I, I haven't had to. And the last 3 years, I've had to be patient with myself. I've allowed myself to grow. I've allowed myself to reflect and realize, hey, you thought this was going to take you 3 months? It's going to take you a little longer. I don't know. It's just, I guess, baffling to me how, again, I didn't come this far just to come this far. So, you know, I've lived through 65 years. I'm going to keep going because if not, what was it all for? So I don't know. Kind of went off on a rant there. Sorry about that.
It didn't feel like a rant to me. It felt like well, it just feels like life, right?
And there
You're
you
just
go.
you're just talking
Exactly.
about life.
Exactly. It feels like life. It feels like life. But to me, I think I was given a little more life than what I was used to. So it's the way we handle it, under stress, or, yeah, under a situation that we're not used to. It's how we handle it. Yeah. Mm.
Well, that's also been a similar theme in my life, just where I'm at currently. Things are You're just like, wow, I did not think I was going to be here, or this was going to take too long. I have a good idea of what that feels like.
Mhm. I think we all do. I think we all do.
Right. Well, I mean, it teaches you to be patient, but like you said, wow, 3 months to 3 years, that is, yeah. And then to just continue to move forward with a positive mindset still, and give yourself that grace.
Mhm.
That's important.
That's the hard part. Yep.
So, Luisa, in some sense, you've achieved the pinnacle of Toastmaster success. What do you feel like is next for you?
I kind of wrote a bucket list with a few things that I've wanted to accomplish. And I guess with a bucket list, sometimes we write or jot down part of a reality we think can happen, and part of it is a dream where we maybe just fantasize about it. So the fantasy for me was winning first place. And this is what I've learned is that I don't dream big enough. And I was just wanting to make it to the district level. And yet I kept going and going and going and surpassed it. And I went, wow, okay. So now instead of limiting myself on a goal, I go extreme. And sometimes if you go extreme, you're going to be able to come up to this level, which maybe was the level you were trying to achieve or obtain anyway. But then I realized I was trying to get to this level and I got to this level. So I'm like, wow. The next thing for me is kind of something I've been working for since I know at least 2018, 2019. My second love, even though I am a cat person, is wanting to help the dog situation here in South Texas because we have a situation that is not good. I believe we're number one in the country for euthanizing stray animals because we don't do anything about controlling the breeding. So my goal is to start a free spay and neuter clinic, and I feel that that might be able to control our outbreak of this situation. I have been able to secure the building to have it. I've been able to secure the equipment to do it. I'm just lacking veterinarians that would be able to come and not so much volunteer because I believe I can raise funds to where I could pay veterinarians to come. And I think if I can have 5 veterinarians here for 2 weekends out of a month, possibly in about 7 years or less, with the effort of spaying and neutering, we can remedy the situation of the overpopulation of animals in the streets. So that's my next goal. But and I'm not complaining. Toastmasters is taking up a lot of my time, and I absolutely love it because I love speaking to audiences and trying to influence and motivate. So right now, the spay neuter clinic has taken a little bit of a back burner position because Toastmasters is is taking some of my time up. And I like again, I'm not complaining. Absolutely love it. Looking forward to traveling all over the world and being able to meet different audiences and their culture and just get feedback from them. One thing that I'm realizing is the energy we get or I get from an audience is if you could bottle that and sell it, oh my gosh, that's what I feed off of. And so that energizes me. So I'm looking so forward to this next year and even the years to come. But I think one of the next things that I really need to focus on would be my spay and neuter clinic, which I've talked about for about the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow. Well, no, that's a long-term goal. I was watching the Golden Globes with my dad the other night, and some of the movies that they've made have taken like 10 years to make. You don't know about this stuff. Like, we don't know about all of all
Mhm.
of the work that goes into like making something. It takes, yeah, that's a vision. This sounds like a big vision that you're building for yourself. And it's taking time. And I hope that transition of you being able to focus on that it happens with more ease for you because even I'm like, I love Toastmasters too, but I also have my hobbies that I love to put a lot of time and energy into
Mhm.
because it's my passion. I have other passions.
Good for you. You'll get it. You'll get there.
Thank you. All right. So I have like a affirmation deck here, and this is one that I pulled randomly for you. What do you think about this affirmation? I see my body as my best friend. Maybe it's kind of clear,
Ooh,
kind of
I
blurry.
see my body as my best friend.
Yeah, you can
So
modify
a
that.
best friend is somebody that whether you're on a high or on a low, wherever you are in life, you're going to be able to pick up the phone, call them, they're going to be able to inspire you, they're going to be able to motivate you, they're going to listen to you, they're going to do all these things. And that's why they're your best friend, because they don't judge you. So my body is my best friend. I would say right now, it's just my friend, not my best friend. Because, you know, sometimes you get mad at your best friend, but a week, a month later, you're talking like nothing, you get over it, you move on. So I can see that. I can see that because just recently, I would say last week, I went to the gym and I was on the treadmill going 0.5 miles an hour, which, you know, a baby could crawl faster than that. But I've realized that I've got to start slow with being able to wanting to learn how to walk again. And I believe I pulled a muscle. And when you set a goal and you set the goal right here, and here you come, and here you come, and here you come, and you're almost there, and then something happens and you drop back down to here, you're like, oh, are you serious? So right now, my level of accomplishment has dropped. But then again, I didn't just come this far to just come this far. So I'm allowing myself grace and patience to be able to get back to where I was, and then go slowly back to the gym and start working out and doing that again. And it's a slow process. And again, once like I said, having patience with myself, oh my gosh, probably the hardest thing, because, you know, I have patience for everything else and for my friends and for my animals and everything. But when it comes to myself, I'm like, really, Luisa? Come on. But yeah, best friend, body, it has been, because it's been with me for the last 65 years. It's served its purpose, and it's, I think, for everything I put it through. Yeah, it's my best friend. I like that. That's good.
Awesome. All right, so we are about to come to the end of this podcast. I have a final question for you, Luisa. What final words of advice would you like to offer to our listeners who are pursuing their professional or personal goals?
Great question. I just gave a speech on this. Today we had one of our first meetings for one of the clubs I represent, Toastmaster Club. I said, you know what, Luisa? You're always late to the meetings. You need to show up on time. This is a new year, new you. And I started doing everything I had ahead of time. I got all my things ready. I got stuff I needed to take to the car. I turned around, I was about to leave. One of my dogs has an accident. Okay. So I've got to clean it up. Mind you, I'm still in a wheelchair. So it doesn't take me 5 minutes. It takes me 15 minutes instead of 5. But I'm doing what I got to do. And I make it out the door. And I get to the meeting late. Later than I usually get there. Which here I thought I was going to be early. Not only am I late, I'm later than I usually am. And I've realized that it's in anything and everything you do in life. Do you want to lose weight? You know, I want to lose weight, but then you go and you order the extra taco. Okay, this is not going to help. You know, or you get the extra drink. I want to do this. Well, if you are not doing what needs to be done, the hard thing is staying motivated. If I messed up on the first meeting, I didn't make it on time. And a lot of times, once we mess up, we think, that's it. We're done. Give up. You know, that didn't work. Well, it didn't work, but that doesn't mean you have to give up. Like the next meeting, which is going to be next Wednesday, I'm going to try and make it on time. So allow yourself grace when you make mistakes, but realize it's not the end of the world. Try again and try again. Because I was speaking to somebody, I said, do you know I lost 40 contests? 40 contests. Lose. And yet you get up, turn around, do it again. Get up, turn around, try again, and try again, and try again. Eventually, you'll get exactly what you have been working for. So don't give up. I would say that would be my message to anybody. Whatever it is, you know, the job, the relationship, the speech contest, whatever it is. Get up, dust yourself up, keep going.
Well, that fits. One of my I have a couple key words for myself for this year. I got confidence and I got perseverance. Well, you can't really say that well because of the light, but I think that is what resilience, that perseverance, and without a doubt, Luisa, you are someone who is resilient, truly
Thank you.
resilient. You're an example. You're a living example of that. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here for our podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking me. Thank you.
Right, everyone, that's going to be the end of our episode of Toast and Tea, and I'll see you next time for another episode. Have a good day or evening. Bye.